All right, well, hi everyone, and thanks for joining this update and presentation on IFMAT 4. Hope you're enjoying the symposium so far. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Adrian Leighton. I am a member of the IFMAT 4 core team, was on IFMAT 3 as well, and the Natural Resource Director and Director of the Tree Center at Salish Kootenai College. Was also for about 10, 12 years the co-chair of the ITC Research Subcommittee. So it's great to see you all. And today we're going to kind of give you an update and hopefully answer the age-old question, or at least, for IFMAT 4, who are they and what are they doing? So as many of you may know, that the roots of the Indian Forest Management Assessment Team, or IFMAT, is in the 1990 National Indian Forest Resource Management Act, which required that the Secretary shall fund a 10-year, once every 10-year assessment of the state of tribal forestry, Indian forestry throughout the country. This assessment was to be independently conducted and assembled through a non-federal third party that's familiar with forestry, especially tribal forestry. And of course, since the beginning, that's been ITC. The first IFMAT was finished in 1993, 2003 for the second IFMAT. The third IFMAT was concluded in 2013. So we have a once every 10-year due date of mid-year of 23 for this report, which is basically given to ITC and presented to Congress. There's 8 mandated questions in NIFRMA. I refer to them as the Big 8. These were the ones that the National Indian Forest Resource Management Act said shall be answered every 10 years by this team. We'll take a look at those in a minute. In IFMAT 3, ITC added 3 additional tasks, things that that weren't really on the radar maybe in 1990 that still needed to be focused on, including anchor forests, some educational components, and also climate change. ITC has additionally given us three more tasks this time around, and so there's a total of 11 tasks to be reported on. Ultimately, our goal is to come up with findings and recommendations that help move things forward throughout all of for tribal forest land management, both by BIA and tribes throughout the country. And this is a national, again, objective third-party independent assessment. There won't be, it's looking at the big picture and drawing conclusions nationally through all the different data sources that we gather. No tribes or individuals will be named or singled out in the report, but yet, we rely on data from all of our site visits, and then all the folks we talk to, all the surveys, all the interviews. So it's truly a national picture compiled from individual accounts and site visits. Okay, the 11 tasks. Let's get me out of the way there. Okay, I'm not going to read them all through you. There's nothing more painful than having legislation read out loud in a PowerPoint. I specialize in inflicting boredom in PowerPoint in my academic day job, but just to summarize quickly for those of you who haven't seen these tasks before, the Big 8 were really created by Congress to just kind of take a look at how things were working for tribes through the Bureau and in general, compared to especially other federal agencies or federal agencies, as well as state and private and industrial forest landowners. So there's a comparison of management practices, but also funding amounts, survey of health, whether the tribes are adequately staffed, what the kind of the state and condition of the forest management plans. And also a couple that look at sort of the BIA trust responsibility function, whether there is a chance to streamline or reduce some of the bureaucratic procedures, whether there are basically a need or desire to create minimum standards to judge the fulfillment of the trust responsibility, and then an overall recommendation of reforms and funding that's needed to get there. The additional tasks, which are I through K, include a second kind of deeper dive into climate change, an assessment of how Indian forests fit into the landscape level restoration efforts that are going on right now, and then a look at the capacity of tribes with these new authorities and other potential opportunities to participate in these landscape level management, through the Tribal Forest Protection Act, Good Neighbor Authority, and other things that are coming along that will allow tribes to work at a broader landscape level. So those are the 11 tasks. Just to quickly, one of the questions that we always get asked, which we certainly did in IFMAT 3, was, okay, well, you're here and we're here to help, but what have you, what good has come from these reports before? What has it done for tribes and overall? And so, sometimes it's hard to tell direct outcomes from findings and recommendations. IFMAT's made some findings and recommendations, like increased funding levels. Every one of the past 3 IFMATs, that information has been used to leverage funding requests. The BI's forest management budget has not gone up at the amount that IFMAT recommends, but it has gone up, especially in the last 10 years since the last IFMAT. There are things like that. I think that, the report has been used to leverage funding requests, cooperation with other federal agencies outside the BIA, especially the Forest Service, and a lot of kind of smaller side projects, and again, documentation for things. Like if you remember the HIFPAS, the Hazardous Fuel Priority Allocation System, nobody liked that during IFMAT 3, that it was, reallocation of money within the Department of Interior for fuel funding. It caused a lot of tribes to lose, and the BIA to lose a portion of the fuels funding that they had in the past. It went away shortly after IFMAT 3. How involved IFMAT 3 was in that, it may have happened anyway, but these are the sorts of things we know kind of line up with our recommendations. As John Sessions points out, that the IFMAT in all 3 previous IFMATs has made a recommendation for a self-governance structure along the lines of ITARA, and ITARA happened a few years ago. Whether IFMAT was just 30 years ahead of its time, or had some role in that ultimate crafting, we're not really sure. But the thing do track closely. There are a lot of places where IFMAT recommendations do seem to take hold, even if it's slowly and not at the scale that the team has recommended. And then just as an example, and I guess one other thing to point out is that the IFMAT, as an independent team, makes the findings and recommendations. ITC is then in charge of the implementation. And in IFMAT 3, there were 74 recommendations. 65 have been addressed through actions, ITC symposia, workshops, discussions, projects in some way. 65 of the 74 recommendations got some kind of legs or leverage. So, okay, enough about what we've done in the past, or what we hope we've done in the past, and on to who we are now. So IFMAT 4 looks slightly different in organization than certainly IFMAT 3, where there were 2 co-chairs and then 8 sort of additional team members, and then 3 student participants. This time around, ITC asked John Sessions and John Gordon if they would be willing to come back for a 4th IFMAT. They were co-chairs of the first 3 since the beginning, and they agreed to. They did ask that 2 additional co-chairs be brought on. That ended up being Sarah Hoagland and myself. Sarah was student participant in IFMAT 3. I was one of the team. And then they also asked for a program manager as part of the core team. And that's Vinny Correo, who was also on IFMAT 3. So this is the core team. We're going to be involved in the final writing summary of findings and recommendations. Each of us are facilitating 2 of the 11 tasks, except for John Sessions, who is facilitating 3. So we're going to be in charge of those, and then as a team putting them all together. In that process, we've identified a team of technical specialists who are going to help us with those individual tasks. Some of these folks may look familiar to you. John Bailey, David Cleaves, and Mark Rasmussen were on IFMAT 3 as well, so they're coming back to help out, especially with some of the tasks they had experience with in IFMAT 3. George Smith has, I think at this point, probably close to 55 years of experience in Indian forestry and forest management. Has both BIA and tribal perspective. George is going to be a great asset. And Mark Correo from Northwest Management, Tim Vredenberg from the Cow Creek Umpqua tribe, and then Mike Dockery at University of Minnesota, formerly the Forest Service, now at University of Minnesota, are all on to help us with those 11 tasks. We're bringing on this time not 3 but 5 students. We did sort of put out essentially an RFP. We asked students to apply. We had I think 9 or 10. We had an amazing number of applicants and some great candidates, and we've picked a team of 5 students who have been joining us on monthly student calls. They were starting to help us with individual tasks related, some of the submetrics of the individual tasks related to their areas of expertise and study. And so the students include Austin Derglow, who is a member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes and is pursuing master's degree in water resources and a law degree at University of Idaho. Anthony Sioko, who is a member of the Muskogee Nation and is pursuing a master's in natural resources at Oregon State University. Chase Christofferson, who is Sioux and Mandan. He's at University of North Dakota State and is doing a master's in natural resource management. Hannah Funk, who is a first-generation descendant of the Confederated and Salish Kootenai tribes. She is doing a PhD at University of Idaho in fire ecology. And Tyler Everett, who is a member of the Aroostook Band of Micmacs, and he is pursuing a PhD in forest resources at the University of Maine. So we've got students who represent a wide variety of both different expertises and tribes from different regions and parts of the country. So excited to have them on board. Okay, in terms of one of the first things we did once we started back in May of 2020, so we're a year into this already. We started a little bit earlier than in past IFMATs, and we're able to devote quite a bit of time into some of the planning process. So not to spend too much time again reading flowcharts, but we basically have 5 phases. The first phase has been completed now. We are, at this point, we are here in phase 2. We've basically created metrics for all the tasks, created a handbook for tribal visits, we created a methodology for deciding which tribes we wanted to visit and how to gather other methodology. Worked with the ITC Oversight Committee, which was formed during phase 1 to develop a budget and bring on to identify and get contract permission to bring on the technical specialists and the students. At this point, we're disseminating surveys. We're actually doing virtual Zoom meetings with the BIA regions to get input and perspective before we start the individual site visits with tribes. We will be gearing up on those soon. We've sent out, I believe it's 42 requests to tribes for site visits. At this point, we've received formal or informal thumbs up on about 23 of them. We're now sending the handbooks, letters of invitation from ITC, and starting to engage on getting some site visits done this summer. Of course, COVID permitting, each tribe is working with each tribe's protocols and their comfort levels. And we are, in all cases, planning on doing a virtual Zoom day one visit, and then hopefully, again, the pandemic allowing, some form of site visit, maybe a day or two field visit for each tribal visit. And those we should be hopefully gearing up this summer. So phase 3 will sort of be after we conclude the site visits, or as we're still kind of finishing up site visits, we'll do a gap analysis to see what other data we need, and start to craft our major findings and our themes, and begin the writing process. Phase 4 is essentially the writing and then presenting the final product to ITC and to Congress. Phase 5 is really ITC's implementation phase, and the IFMAT team, at that point, IFMAT will have concluded its core responsibilities, but team members will be available to participate in implementation as available and as seen appropriate by ITC. So yeah, here's a cover of our handbook. We did about 2 years ago, ITC Operations Committee came up with the idea of doing an after-action review of IFMAT 3. Talked to pretty much everyone who was on the IFMAT 3 team, some folks who had hosted tribal foresters, who had hosted site visits, members of the oversight committee. Came up with some really good information that I think is helping us kind of make IFMAT 4 more effective, more just bigger bang for the buck, and giving us a chance to really kind of build this up with strong foundations. One of the after action review findings was that we needed to improve or fix the way we engage with tribes over visits, and that the expectations were clear, what kind of site report or other things that they would be receiving, the role of the focus groups and the surveys, and all the different elements of a site visit. So we put together a handbook which has frequently asked questions and all sorts of other information in there, and that this is really going to help make it easier to host a visit from the IFMAT team, and make it just like I said, a more efficient and effective process. So I think a lot of these other bullet points have been covered, but we are up and running, gathering data, and we'll probably be at a reservation near you in the next couple of summers. So speaking of that, we could use your help even if we don't see you in the field right away. One of the core parts behind the IFMAT process are the surveys, and the tribal member survey. Basically, the same questions have been asked since IFMAT 1, and that's to some degree, you look at the questions and go, oh, they were written 30 years ago. If I could have written them differently, maybe I would. But asking the same questions every time allows us to really get a great 30-year data set. We basically got a sense, both tribal members and the foresters who provide services to those tribal members are asked questions about what they think tribal members want, what's working, what isn't working, what they value. And so we have this long view now of changes from IFMAT to IFMAT in how tribal member satisfaction is. We've seen a closing of a narrowing of a gap between what the tribal members wanted from their forest management. Back in 1993, there was a pretty big discrepancy between what the tribal members said they wanted and what the foresters thought the tribal members wanted. That is really converged now, and consequently, tribal member satisfaction and forest management has gone way up. We could use your help with that, either from your perspective if you're a tribal member, or as a provider of forest management. The link is here. I'll be throwing them up in the chat during the streaming of this video, so that you can click on them right there. But we could really use your help. Last in IFMAT 3, we got about 226 tribal member surveys. Like to see more. The more data, the better. And we'd like to have everybody's input counts. And so the other one that gave us a really good look at was the workforce survey. Gave us a good look at workforce demographics, age, what schools people went to, information about their kind of educational and professional journey, what kind of trainings and other things they had access to, and what they would like. That was really, really helpful in IFMAT 3, and we'll be doing it again. Again, pretty much the same questions, so so that we can kind of get a 10-year snapshot. So greatly appreciate all of your help, and please send it to your send these links to your contacts. We'll be showing up in the field with paper copies, so we can do it old school for folks who aren't spending most of the time on a computer, which is probably a lot of us these days. But we do have these SurveyMonkey links. I think neither of these surveys would take. The tribal member survey probably takes 15 to 20 minutes. The workforce one's probably about 10 minutes. So they're not too exhaustive. I know people tend to suffer from survey fatigue, but hopefully this will be, again, it'll be worth your time and greatly appreciated, and will help enrich the findings of the report. So that's pretty much it for the package presentation. We look forward to your questions. Hopefully there's quite a few members of the core team, the technical specialists and students who can engage in the discussion. We did create this is a brand new email for us, so you can be the first one to use it, at IFMAT4 or ifmativ@gmail.com. Is just an easy way to remember if you want to get a hold of us, if you have a question or an idea, or hey, you should think about this, a sort of suggestion. We'd love to hear it. Or you can always contact any of the core team members, or and especially Vinny at this contact information. So at that point, I just want to say thank you once again for listening, and we appreciate your input both now during the question and answer session and the couple of years to come as we delve into IFMAT 4. Thank you. Have a great day.
As mentioned, now we have an opportunity to answer any questions. We already have one question that was flagged in the Q&A from Jim, and that both Vincent and Sarah offered some suggestions on that one. So if anyone wants to take a look at that question, or Sarah, Vincent, if you think it's important to bring it to the group. If anybody wants to open their mic and ask a question, just go ahead and put that raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. And in case folks missed it, Pete was sharing how important it is, encouraging tribes to take the opportunity to talk with IFMAT and share successes and concerns. Tribal input is important to provide an accurate status on Indian forestry.
And I just wanted to live encourage everyone to click on those two SurveyMonkey links. You can click on them and go back and do them later, or copy them and for later, but really would appreciate your input. During IFMAT 3, both of those surveys were disseminated at the ITC Symposium, and the responses were an important part of the overall data gathering effort. So help would be great. Thanks.
We'll make sure to repost those at the end of today as well, so folks can track them. All right. So just in case folks didn't see the question, Jim was mentioning that he'd had a question posed recently. In light of Indian self-determination and tribal sovereignty, how does BIA still have so much control? Vincent, do you want to share some of your response so I don't have to read it?
Yes, I just mentioned that, if the tribes pursued contracting or compacting, then the funding would come directly to them, and they would have more direct control over their management activities, which does limit a little bit of the day-to-day bureau interactions. but the ITARA, the Indian Trust Asset Reform Act, is actually the next expanded step to have the tribes fully manage their resources under their own rules and regulations. So there are avenues for the tribes to take to, if they want to, limit the engagement with the Bureau on their reservations.
Thank Vincent. And Sarah, you added some items, but we just got 3 questions in, so I want to make sure we have an opportunity to look at those. So Jeff Krantz was asking, can you share which tribes have confirmed a site visit?
Yeah, that's probably a question for me. There's 23 that have already accepted, and let me take a quick look here. So before I wing it, how many there are, but that have accepted. But I can tell you. All right, it's the Chugachmute in Alaska, Tanana Chiefs, the Galena, Otna group in Alaska. Let's see, Metlakatla, the Tulalip, Umatilla, Cow Creek, Karuk, Colville. And these are all tentative. We haven't got responses back from all the tribal council, but the forestry programs have confirmed as Purse, Yakima, Spokane, Salish Kootenai, White Mountain Apache, Mescalero, Navajo, Acoma Pueblo, Crow, Leech Lake, Red Lake, Eastern Band of the Cherokee. So far, those are the tribes that have responded. We have received 3 confirmations from tribal council. ITC sent a letter to all those tribes. Actually, ITC sent letters to all 40 plus tribes that we have contacted. Those are the ones that have made active responses back to the IFMAT team.
And just to chime in here on Vincent's comment, sorry, just about the list of tribes, we can definitely get that out. Our sampling strategy that we did was pretty detailed, recognizing that we don't have a massive budget. We do have some confined numbers to work with. We kind of went through this optimization strategy to get a nice diverse array of tribes throughout the US that have different governance structures, different land base size, whether or not they were visited by previous IFMATs to then kind of add to that trend line. We looked at very special attributes and unique forest health topics. So we went through a pretty exhaustive process to do that sampling scheme, and we can definitely share that that list. The other question about how students are engaged with IFMAT, we're encouraging the students to visit and attend some of the tribal site visits, as well as Adrian mentioned in the presentation, adding some comments to all the different tasks as well and utilizing their expertise. That's it. Sorry. Thanks, Stephanie.
No worries.
I'd like to add to Sarah too, that we looked at all the category 1, 2, 3, 4 tribes nationwide and tried to get a representative sample across the whole nation. I did see another question here. Historically, what were the goals that BI Forestry had that were different than the tribes? It's so different nationally and regionally. So it's kind of a difficult question, but I would say that a common thread is there are tribes that want to engage more in self-determination, take more control of their day-to-day activities. And those tribes look at contracting with some other method, where direct service tribes that are working directly with the Bureau, many are satisfied with those services, seem to align much better. So it's really a tribal specific question that you've asked. And it also, we want to remind everybody, as Adrian said, that, the IFMAT is a national in scope assessment. So we do not single out any individual tribe or any individuals. So, it is a nationwide in scope assessment. So we will have a report, a tribal site visit to each tribe, but that will be specifically for themselves and not to be shared with anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. And you all answered so many of the questions in the Q&A box, so thank you. We'll have those questions and answers available for folks. And if I heard correctly, the IFMAT 14 will provide a list of those tribes with site visits and that information for folks to reference. Did I get that right? And
yes,
we also
we can do that. Now we have contacted 44 tribes, and the ones that I mentioned were the ones that have responded, that have interest in having the assessment done. So we have a complete list, and we can provide that, but recognizing that we may not be invited by all those tribes. We hope to, and we will continue to engage with them. But right now we have confirmed from their forestry programs, I think 23, but only 4 have responded through their tribal council. So it's a process we're working on.